Emma Clark had spent her whole life wondering why her father looked at her like she didn't belong. From the time she was a little girl, he'd say things that left scars she couldn't see. "You're too light to be my daughter," he'd mutter, staring at her sandy hair and gray-blue eyes with something colder than doubt. Her mother Laura would always hush him. "Daniel, please," she'd whisper, but he never stopped. He'd accuse her of things Emma didn't understand back then. To him, Emma wasn't his daughter. She was evidence of a betrayal that never happened. When Emma announced her engagement, she thought maybe it would heal the cracks in her family. It didn't. It only gave Daniel one more reason to humiliate her. It happened on a Sunday evening at their house in Stamford, a white brick colonial with gleaming floors and polished silver that Laura cleaned every Saturday. The whole family was there, her grandmother Helen sitting straight-backed at the end of the table and her older brother Adam, who stayed quiet like always. The roast was untouched when Daniel set down his glass and said, "I won't walk another man's child down the aisle." The words hit harder than any slap. Laura's hand trembled so badly her knife clattered onto her plate. "Daniel," she whispered, "not tonight." But he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He slid it across the table toward Emma. "You've got 6 weeks," he said. "Take this test and send the results to the family. If it proves you're mine, I'll walk you down the aisle. I'll even apologize." He gave a tight smile. "But we both know it won't." Helen's eyes narrowed, the sound of her teacup cracking against the saucer slicing through the silence. Emma looked at the paper, an official paternity consent form, and then at her father. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She only said, "Thank you for the reminder, Daniel. I'll remember this." Then she slid the paper back toward him and stood up. Her mother covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Adam didn't move. No one did. Emma left the table quietly, but inside her chest, something fierce began to burn. After 28 years of silence, she wasn't afraid of his accusations anymore. This time she was going to uncover the truth, whatever it cost. That night, in her small apartment in New Haven, Emma sat across from her fiancé, Ryan, retelling everything. His jaw tightened with every word. "Maybe you should do it," he said gently. "Take the test. Prove him wrong." Emma stared at the glass of wine in her hand. "This isn't about him anymore," she said quietly. "It's about my mom. He's been punishing her for nearly 30 years. Ryan reached for her hand, but her mind was already racing. She remembered something her grandmother once said, "Keep every paper from the hospital where you were born. One day you'll need them." That day had come. The next morning, Emma woke up early, the air outside gray with rain. She couldn't stop replaying her father's words. "Another man's child." They echoed in her mind like a curse. She drove to work in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. At the hospital parking lot, she sat for a full minute before going inside. Emma was a nurse. Ironic, she thought, that she spent her life caring for others while her own father treated her like a mistake. That night, when she came home, Ryan was waiting with a folder on the table. "A DNA lab in Hartford," he said. "Independent. Confidential. No connections to your dad." Emma stared at the logo on the folder, GeneLink Diagnostics. Her pulse quickened. "You already called them?" she asked. "I did," Ryan said. "They can take your sample anytime. If you want." She hesitated, thinking of Laura's tired eyes, the way she'd looked small at the dinner table. "If I take this test," Emma said slowly, "I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for her." Ryan nodded. "Then do it your way." She smiled faintly. "I will." That night, Emma placed a call to her grandmother, Helen. The older woman's voice was sharp but warm. "Good," Helen said after hearing her plan. "It's time someone put an end to his madness." 3 weeks later, Daniel's 60th birthday arrived. The party was at the Ridgeview Country Club, a grand place overlooking the water, filled with old friends and polished smiles. Emma almost didn't go, but Helen insisted. "You don't hide from men like him," she'd said. "You face them." So Emma went, wearing a simple navy dress and a calm expression that masked the storm inside her. Ryan held her hand as they entered the hall. Daniel was already giving a speech, champagne in hand. "Thank you all," he said proudly, his eyes gleaming. "Family means everything to me, except when it's not really family." The room froze. Laura's face went pale. Adam whispered, Dad, please stop. But Daniel only laughed. No, no, let's be honest, he said, turning toward Emma. My daughter here has been avoiding a simple truth. Maybe it's time we all admit what's obvious. He raised his glass toward her. You know what they call a bird that lays its eggs in another's nest? Hiku. It looks pretty, but it doesn't belong. Someone gasped. Emma's chest burned, but she didn't flinch. She set her glass down, her voice steady as steel. Thank you for the reminder, Daniel. I'll remember this. Emma walked out of the hall without another word, Laura following close behind, tears streaking her cheeks. They stepped into the cold night air, silence wrapping around them like a blanket. Helen caught up moments later, her heels sharp on the pavement. Emma, she called, her breath short. There's something I need to tell you. Emma turned. Helen's face looked pale, older than usual. The night you were born, Helen said quietly, something strange happened at St. Mary's Hospital. I never told your parents because I didn't have proof, but I think now's the time to find out. Emma stared at her grandmother, her heart pounding. What do you mean, something strange? Helen looked around, making sure no one was nearby. The nurse who brought you out that night, she was trembling, she said softly. She rushed through everything. Your grandfather noticed it too. We thought it was exhaustion, but later, when I tried to get copies of your hospital papers, they said the records were sealed. No one could explain why. Laura's eyes widened. Mom, you never told me that. Helen sighed. You were too young and too broken from the delivery. But I've kept copies of what little I could find. Come by tomorrow. The next morning, Emma drove to Helen's house. A small, ivy-covered cottage filled with old books and the smell of jasmine tea. Her grandmother was waiting with a worn envelope. I copied your birth certificate the week you were born, she said, handing it over. Look at the time. Emma's eyes narrowed. Time of birth, 11:47 p.m. She frowned. That's strange. Mom always said I was born at midnight. Helen nodded. Exactly. She told me the doctor joked about almost being a leap day baby. Emma looked up slowly. That's an 11-minute difference. Helen's expression hardened. And sometimes 11 minutes can change everything. Emma took the envelope home and sat at her kitchen table, staring at it for hours. The words kept circling in her mind. Something strange happened. She pulled out her laptop and searched for St. Mary's Hospital staff from 1996. After an hour, she found it. A retirement notice for Margaret Sullivan, former head nurse. The article mentioned she now lived in Bridgeport. Emma wrote down the address, her pulse racing. Ryan watched from across the room. You really think this nurse knows something? He asked. I don't know, Emma said, but she was there that night. If anyone can explain this, it's her. The next day, Emma called the number she found online. After several rings, a shaky voice answered. Hello. Mrs. Sullivan? Emma said carefully. My name is Emma Clark. I was born at St. Mary's on February 12, 1996. I think you were the head nurse that night. There was a pause, then panic in the woman's voice. I don't know what you're talking about. Please don't call again. The line went dead. Emma stared at her phone in disbelief. She hung up, she whispered. Ryan frowned. That's not guilt. That's fear. Emma nodded slowly. She knows something, Ryan. She's hiding it. 3 days later, Emma received an email from her father, sent to the entire extended family, over 40 relatives. The subject line read, regarding Emma's wedding. Her stomach twisted as she opened it. Dear family, Daniel wrote, after years of suspicion, I've asked Emma to take a DNA test. She's refused, which says enough. Until she cooperates, I will not attend her wedding. I hope you'll understand my decision. Attached was a baby photo of Emma with a red circle drawn around her blonde hair and blue eyes. Underneath, Daniel had written, Spot the difference. Emma's phone buzzed nonstop with relatives' replies. Questions, gossip, pity. That night Adam called. Just do what he wants, he said. You're making him look bad. Emma laughed bitterly. Making him look bad? He's doing that all by himself. She ended the call, threw her phone onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Ryan knelt beside her. You don't have to face this alone, he said softly. She looked up, her eyes red. I'm not afraid of him anymore. I just want the truth. The next morning, Emma drove to the DNA lab. Dr. Reyes, a calm woman with kind eyes, took her sample, sealed it, and promised results in 3 weeks. Emma left feeling both terrified and free. 3 weeks later, the results arrived in Emma's inbox. The subject line was short: DNA analysis, confidential. She opened it and stared at the words that didn't make sense at first. Subject A, Emma Clark, 0% genetic match with subject B, Daniel Clark. Her chest tightened, but she'd expected that. Then came the second line. Subject A, 0% genetic match with subject C, Laura Clark. Her breath caught. That's impossible, she whispered. Her hands shook as she called the lab. The technician confirmed it. No error. No contamination. The test was clear. Emma wasn't related to either of her parents. Not by blood. She sat on her kitchen floor, shaking. Her father's cruelty had always been rooted in a lie, but the truth was even worse. If she wasn't Daniel's daughter, fine. But if she wasn't Laura's either, then whose child was she? When she finally managed to speak, she called her mother. Laura answered on the second ring. "Mom, you need to see something," Emma said. She drove to her parents' house, the report in her trembling hands. Laura read it once, twice, then her face drained of color. "No," she whispered. "This has to be wrong. I gave birth to you. I remember." Her voice cracked. "I saw you." Emma took her mother's cold hands in hers. "I believe you," she said softly. "Which means something happened at that hospital." Laura's eyes darted to the wall clock as if searching for the past. "The birth certificate says 11:47, she murmured. "But I remember the doctor saying it was almost midnight. I was watching the clock. You were born at 11:58. She looked at Emma, horror dawning. "That's 11 minutes apart." Emma nodded slowly. 11 minutes that might have switched 2 lives forever. For the first time, Laura began to cry. Not the quiet kind, but deep, shattering sobs that filled the room. "We'll find them," Emma whispered, holding her mother close. "We'll find out what happened." Helen arrived an hour later, her eyes wide when she saw the report. "I knew something was wrong," she muttered. "That nurse, Margaret Sullivan, she's the key." Emma nodded. "I called her." She hung up. Helen's lips tightened. "Then call again. If she won't talk, we'll find someone who will. The truth has waited long enough." Emma looked at the paper in her hand, the 0% that had rewritten her entire life. 28 years, she whispered. 28 years of lies. And it all started in one hospital room. The next morning, Emma called Margaret Sullivan again. The line rang 6 times before going to voicemail. She tried once more, this time leaving a message that was calm but firm. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is Emma Clark. I know you remember that night. I have DNA evidence proving something went wrong. I'm not here to blame you, but I deserve to know the truth." She paused, then added, "If I don't hear from you, I'll go to court and subpoena the hospital records." Her voice trembled, but she ended the call. 2 hours later, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number read, "Riverside Diner. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone." Emma hardly slept that night. By morning, her stomach was tight with nerves. She told Ryan where she was going, despite the message's warning. "I'll stay nearby," he said. "Text me if anything feels off." She agreed. The Riverside Diner was an old roadside place. Faded red booths, smell of coffee and fried onions, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. In the far corner sat a small woman with silver hair pulled back neatly and a trembling coffee cup in her hand. When she saw Emma approach, she sighed. "You look just like her," she said softly. "Laura?" Emma asked. "No," Margaret whispered. "Your real mother." Emma froze. "You know who she is?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Her name was Linda Harper. She gave birth the same night as Laura. 2 baby girls 11 minutes apart. You were one of them." Emma felt her knees weaken. "What happened?" she whispered. Margaret opened her old leather notebook, its pages yellowed. The trainee nurse made a mistake. She bathed both infants, mixed up the bracelets, and realized too late. The administrator decided it would cause less pain to leave things as they were. "We were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. I carried this secret for 28 years. Emma's throat tightened. "So you all knew?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I was 24 and scared. They said I'd lose my license if I spoke up." She reached into her purse and slid an envelope across the table. Your real mother's address. She lives in Boston now. I'm sorry, Emma. I truly am. Emma stared at the paper, her world spinning. What about the other girl? She asked. The one raised by Linda. Margaret hesitated, then whispered, her name is Rachel Harper. She's your mother's biological daughter. She's a teacher. Emma folded the paper with trembling hands. Thank you, she said quietly, for finally telling the truth. That night, Emma sat in her apartment staring at the computer screen. She typed the name Rachel Harper, Boston, and scrolled through the results until she found her. Brown hair, brown eyes, smiling in a classroom photo. She looked like Adam's twin. Emma's breath hitched. She wrote a message, deleted it, then wrote it again. Hi Rachel, my name is Emma Clark. I believe we were switched at birth at St. Mary's Hospital on February 12, 1996. I have documentation and a witness. Please call me if you're willing to talk. She attached her number, hit send, and closed the laptop before she could lose her nerve. The next day passed in silence. Then just after 9 that night her phone rang. Is this Emma? The voice on the other end was gentle, cautious. Yes. Rachel. There was a pause, then a shaky laugh. My dad, well, the man who raised me, used to joke that the hospital must have mixed us up. We all laughed. Guess he wasn't wrong. Emma smiled through tears. No, he wasn't. They spoke for hours, sharing stories of families that didn't quite fit, of mothers who seemed haunted by something unnamed. By midnight, Rachel said softly, let's take a DNA test. I need to know for sure. Emma agreed. We'll do it together. 10 days later, the results confirmed everything. Rachel Harper, 99.97% match with Daniel and Laura Clark. Emma read it 3 times before whispering, it's real. Rachel's voice trembled through the phone. So your parents, they're mine. And yours are in Boston. They sat in silence, both crying softly. I want to meet them, Rachel said finally. Both families deserve the truth. Emma nodded, even though Rachel couldn't see her. Then we'll tell them together. No more secrets. They agreed to meet in person before facing their parents. Emma didn't know it yet, but their meeting would change everything. They met at a coffee shop halfway between Hartford and Boston. When Emma walked in, Rachel was already there, nervously stirring her drink. Their eyes met, and it was like looking into an alternate version of herself. Rachel smiled awkwardly. This is surreal. Emma laughed. That's one word for it. They talked for 3 hours. About childhoods, schools, fears, and the strange connection they felt even as strangers. Before parting, Rachel said, I want to meet your parents. Emma hesitated, then nodded. We'll do it at my engagement party. Everyone will be there. It's time my father learns the truth publicly. The engagement party was held at Helen's estate. A wide garden strung with lights, full of relatives who had read Daniel's cruel email. Emma wore a simple emerald dress. Ryan stayed close, steady as ever. Laura arrived quietly, her hand shaking in Helen's. Daniel came late as always, smiling like he owned the night. Family, he boomed. Let's celebrate honestly for once. Emma watched him raise a glass. He began his speech, pretending to joke. You all know my daughter took a DNA test, he said. Turns out I was right after all, she isn't mine or Laura's. Laughter rippled uneasily through the crowd. Then Emma stood. She walked to the microphone, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. You're right, Daniel, she said evenly. The DNA test proved I'm not your biological daughter. But it also proved something else. She turned to the crowd. My mother never cheated. Because I'm not her biological daughter either. A shocked murmur filled the air. I was switched at birth, Emma said. And the daughter you've been looking for is here tonight. She nodded toward the entrance. Rachel stepped into the light, brown-eyed and calm. The resemblance to Daniel was undeniable. Gasps spread like wildfire. This, Emma said, is Rachel Harper. Your real daughter. Daniel's face turned white. He stared at Rachel like he was seeing a ghost. Emma tapped her phone, and the screen behind them lit up with documents. The DNA reports, the nurse's statement, even the hospital log. A trainee nurse mixed us up that night, Emma said. The hospital covered it up to avoid a lawsuit. Margaret Sullivan was there. She signed an affidavit confirming it. From the corner, the old nurse stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. Your wife never betrayed you, Mr. Clark. The hospital did. We were threatened into silence. The crowd erupted into whispers. Daniel swayed, gripping the table for support. Laura stepped forward, her eyes full of tears. 28 years, Daniel. I begged you to believe me. Her voice shook, but her posture was proud. You made our lives miserable over a lie. Daniel dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. Laura, I didn't know. You could have found out, she said sharply. You could have trusted me. Adam stood, his jaw tight. Dad, enough, he said. You destroyed this family. Laura turned to Rachel then, tears streaming. Hi, she whispered. I'm your mother. Rachel's lip trembled as she nodded. Hi, Mom. The entire room fell silent as they embraced. When Daniel finally stood again, he looked 10 years older. His voice cracked as he spoke into the microphone. I was wrong, he said quietly. For 28 years I accused my wife of something she never did. And I made my daughter feel like she didn't belong. He turned toward Emma. I can't undo what I've done, but I'll try to make it right. Emma stared at him for a long time before answering. You can start by believing the truth. He nodded, tears spilling freely now. I'll pay your school debts, he said. Every cent. It's not enough, but it's something. The room stayed silent. 3 months later, Emma met her biological mother, Linda Harper, in Boston. The moment the door opened, she froze. Same eyes, same hair, same cautious smile. Linda pulled her into a long, shaking hug. I've dreamed about this for years, she whispered. They talked for hours, sharing photos, tears, and laughter. Linda told her about her life, about Rachel's childhood, about her late husband who'd never known the truth. He always said Rachel had an old soul, Linda said, smiling sadly. Now I understand. She was carrying your family's eyes all along. Emma smiled softly. And I was carrying yours. Months passed and healing came slowly. Emma's wedding was small, beautiful, held in Helen's garden under the same lights where the truth had come out. Laura walked her down the aisle. Rachel stood among the bridesmaids. Daniel sat quietly in the front row, humbled, his hands clasped. Linda was there too, tears glistening as she watched her biological daughter begin a new chapter. In her vows, Emma said simply, family isn't made by DNA. It's made by love, forgiveness, and truth. That night, as laughter filled the garden, Helen raised a toast. To the truth, she said, smiling. However long it takes.